Okay, guys, hope summer's going well. Parashat Chukat coming up. And then we have the famous mitzvah of the Hakat Hasela, the hitting of the rock from Moshe Rabbeinu. Let's do a little bit of work in terms of Ian and come up with hopefully a fascinating novel Parashat of Rav Shimshon for Hirsch to help explain what exactly the Avera was and the nature of what made it so terrible. So we know that Moshe Rabbeinu was very, very frustrated looking for the famous rock, the one which was giving all the water into the well, that was funding the well of Miriam throughout their time in the desert. With Miriam's passing, Chazal say that the well was taken away because the well, the Be'er, was only the source of Miriam. Absent Miriam, there was no more well, and therefore the rock that was in there looked like any other rock. So Rashi explains that Moshe couldn't find that rock. When he finally happened upon it, people were yelling and screaming, Moshe, what difference does it make? What rock you're going to hit? Just get any rock. And he said, Shimu nahamorim, listen, you rebellious people. Do you think I can take water from just any rock? And by the way, according to the Ramban, that was the main Avera. The fact that he said Shimu nahamorim, that Moshe seemed to get angry at the people who were very, very thirsty. And the fact that he criticized him that way and he kind of lost his cool, that was actually a pagam in Moshe. That was the criticism of the Ramban in terms of this Avera. Rashi says that he didn't teach them the proper lesson, because had he been able to go ahead and speak to the rock to pull the water out and not gotten frustrated and hit it, he would have taught people the following lesson. If a rock, which doesn't have little baby rocks depending upon it, will hear the command of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and comply, then Kal V'chomer, Bnei Yisrael would imply a Kal V'chomer themselves and say, well, we certainly should listen to the word of Hashem and comply. So Rav Hirsch gives an alternate shot, which is really very, very beautiful. His explanation is that one has to really think about the difference between two different scenarios. In fact, it's a famous question. Why is it that over here, Moshe Rabbeinu was told to speak to the rock? In fact, he was told to take his kachasamateh, take the staff, and go speak to the rock. And yet when this situation happened earlier and the Jews needed water, earlier in Refidim, Hashem told Moshe, go ahead and hit the rock. Take your staff and hit the rock. So why hit the rock in Refidim and speak to the rock in Meribah? So Rav Hirsch explains that one has to understand the context and what the era was. In Refidim, they were in year number 1, having come out of Egypt recently. And everything they were used to was derech nes. They drank water from a well. They ate mun from the sky. They followed a cloud during the day and a fire at night. Everything about their whole existence was al pi nes. So when Bnei Yisrael needed water, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, go ahead and go get water for them from the least likely place in the world to get it, which is a dry rock, and take your staff, which you do all the miracles with, the Eser Makot, Kriyat Yam Suf, take your miracle staff and do yet another miracle in front of them. And that's what happened. Kachava, Moshe hit the rock and water came gushing out. But now in year number 40, Bnei Yisrael are just a few months away from going into Israel. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu needs to teach the lesson to the people that you have to get used to living al pi teva. Because in a few short months, you'll be getting into Israel, and the mun will stop, and the be'er will stop. You're going to have to get involved in chaklaut, in agriculture, and till the soil, and plant, and sow, and reap, and cut down all the crops, and grind, and do all those things that we do in terms of feeding ourselves. It's a very different existence. However, when you get into Israel, and you get involved in agriculture, you're still going to need my help for one thing. The one thing you're always going to need HaKadosh Baruch Hu's help for is water. Just like you need water now, you're going to need rain then. And when you need that rain, there's only one way to get it. You have to ask for it. You have to daven. And that is done only b'dibur. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, according to Rav Hirsch, wanted to teach Bnei Yisrael by Moshe taking his staff and showing them, listen, this was the old method. The open nace. I could do this, but I'm not gonna. I'm gonna speak to the rock because you should know that if you ever need water from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, all you have to do is ask for it the right way with a full heart, sincerely, and he'll respond. And that was the lesson that Moshe failed to teach Bnei Yisrael by hitting the rock. And that's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu asked him to hit the rock in year number 1 in Refidim and speak to the rock in year number 40 in Meribah. I hope that we'll realize from this, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is looking forward to us being Mekadeshim Shemayim, Al Pi Teva, acting the way the people act, going to work, but still also learning Torah and living a frum life of Torah and mitzvahs. Have a great week.